Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel for my concluding final thoughts on Duel of the Giants by Friedemann de Pedro. So I don't have too much to say really, but much to all your relief, I'm sure. But I don't mean that in a bad way because I do actually quite enjoy this game. And as you've seen from the previous videos, what it does. It doesn't pick on any particular battle, any particular historic setup. Although, given the completely modular nature of the board of the pieces, you could create historical scenarios with this game to a degree. But really, its purpose is just to show a generic slice of the Eastern Front and to try to capture, I suppose, really the desperation on both sides. As the Germans, you know that you have the better tanks in the game, and you do have some support from anti-tank weapons, and you have the very useful Stuka. But there is a large horde of Soviet armor descending upon you, and it's not enough for you they don't actually have to destroy you. They score their best points by just dashing off the other side of the board. So it very nicely captures this sense of, oh, our front line is so porous, what are we going to do? We have to somehow stop this red tide before it breaks through us. But I like how it also captures a sense of desperation on the Soviet side, because you can't get away with just throwing in a mindless sort of mass attack. I mean, did that happen historically? Yes, it did very often. But I like the way that this game equally challenges the Soviet player to think, because your tanks are inferior to your German enemies. You can damage them, you can score points off them, but you're most richly rewarded if you can get the majority of your force off the other side of the map. I mean, I personally, as a rule of thumb, I would say if you can get three or more of your tanks off the other side, the game is almost in the bag, if not very actually in the bag, unless something goes terribly wrong elsewhere. So it's a good game in that sense. It captures, in a very simplistic way, this deep tension on the Eastern Front, where these two very asymmetric forces are locked in mortal combat. And I quite like that. It's the spirit, if not necessarily all the reality of it. I really like the models. They you see, I always felt that one of the things that was missing from Duel in the Dark was some nice 3D. So those of you who've watched my videos on that game will remember I added the Lancaster because I felt I had to. But of course, with this game, you get the two splendid Tigers, the 8 T-34s and a Stuka. I understand why they did not stretch to including models of the anti-tank guns, because that would have ruined the hidden element that a counter gives you. And it is worth the German player's while keeping the Soviet player guessing as to what's really an anti-tank weapon and what's not. So I think they struck a good balance there. And as for the models, I mean, I know that that's more of a computer generated image rather than an actual picture of the models themselves. So I might just get them out. The one thing I should make clear is this game, at the time I purchased it at any rate, was pretty inexpensive. I think I paid something around 30 to £35 for my copy. And that was new, not second hand. So I mean, these miniatures, I don't know how clearly they showed up on my previous video, if you could see them all that well. I would say they're beautifully crafted. They look like what they're supposed to. All of the detail is there. You get all the panels on the engine blocks and similar. The hulls are the right shape. They look like the tanks they're supposed to. And they're very decent little models. Don't expect something of the quality of, a Flames of War mini. Although the thought has crossed my mind that if you happen to play Flames of War as I do, maybe one day if you wanted to, if I can use the phrase, pimp up your game, you can borrow a couple of the Tigers and 8 of the T-34s and go for some really nice models. I mean, I think I'll content myself with painting these one day. I know at least one of you has. Thanks for that, Rob. Yes, that's encouraged me to crack on and actually do something about these. So I might paint them up. But for the price point of this game, the models are really, really nice. Not best on the market, but nice. What else shall I talk about? Oh, yes, the combat system. Excuse me, that was the game, not me, honestly. The combat system I find very interesting. It's quite well thought. It nicely models the fact that you've got to plot a move in your head a second or two in advance, because obviously you've got the nature of the beast is that your tank may be moving one direction while your turret is busy doing that. And I like the way the game models you having to think about this, because ideally you want a situation where your gun is pointing at someone else and his gun is pointed elsewhere. The only thing that struck me as a little bit strange was the nature of how you aim guns out of your hex. They have to follow a line of hexes. You can't do the sort of wiggly. I'll show you what I mean. You can't trace a firing line that sort of sidesteps if you're firing out of one of the corners of your hex. That may seem a little odd because it creates all these blind spots for every armored vehicle in the game where a wily enemy player can sort of try and sneak in on you. Now, I don't know whether that rule is just there for simplicity, because they could very easily just say, count the range to the other tanks. But I can see that it would have a bit of an impact on vehicle facing, and before you know it, it starts to become one of those really heavy armored warfare war games. And I think Friedemann de Pedro, if I can, read his mind, I don't think he wanted that. I think he wanted to keep it simple. So it is what it is. I don't mind it. Armor purists may want to go off and play something else, but I don't think it takes away anything from this game, because both sides are hobbled by the same limitations. So although the Tigers generally are not as maneuverable on the battlefield as the T-34s, particularly in winter weather, they still, it's not as if the Russians have an unfair advantage. It's everyone has the same sorts of blind spot. The terrain, I think, is really nicely modelled, and its effects. I like how the rules differentiate between how a forest behaves in the summer and how a forest behaves in the winter. That's really nicely done. I really love that you get certain terrain types in winter. I mean, the snowdrift is the classic one. And you don't really have an equivalent of it in the summer. Equally, you have the swamp in the summer, which doesn't really have an equivalent in the winter. So that it all makes sense. It's very simple, but it's very well thought out. So on balance, I think there's nothing not to like about this game, really. The component quality, I've already touched on the models, but the boards are excellent, the cards are very good. The reference cards I'm very impressed by. They're on really, really sturdy cardstock. It's on a par with the game board. And of course, you get these lovely. I like all the nods in the iconography where the team game badges you actually do. It's an Order of Suvorov, or it's your Panzer. So I think that's a service badge. People who are more familiar with their German orders and decorations, please correct me if I'm wrong there. But yes, it's very, very aesthetically pleasing as a game. And in that sense, I think it comfortably rivals Duel in the Dark. I think that's a very good looking game, and so is this one. They both definitely score highly for me in that sense. And you can tell it was the same graphics artist who's done the vehicles for this game as for its, I'll call it its stablemate. So yes, a very simple, very straightforward game that is easy to teach, easy to pick up, a little difficult to master because there are tips and tricks that both sides have to learn. The Soviet needs to be very careful and watch for a wily German player creating these interlocking fields of fire. If the German player is good at running his panzers in effective cooperation with his anti-tank guns and the Stuka, then the Soviet player is not in for a good time. Equally, a wily Soviet player with the nice hidden movement mechanic, and I do like how the Soviet hidden movement mechanic works. Um, they can catch the German out of position. If the German isn't careful and doesn't try to cover as much of his ground as he can, he'll leave a corridor that the Soviets can just pour through. In a way, an ideal situation for the Soviet player is to find that the German has left you an exploitable gap and just go pouring in with a smug look on your face, while him, red-faced, is trying desperately to reorient his forces and catch these high-speed T-34s as they go thundering past. Yes, Germans never forget that if they have clear step in front of them, whether it's summer or winter, T-34s can floor the pedal and move 5 spaces. I really, really like that, and it's an encouragement to the German player, as far as he or she, sorry, is able, to make sure you've got plenty of mines and blocking terrain. So all these great things in the game that you're compelled to think about, they're all broadly correct, they're all broadly representative, but it doesn't bog you down in excess rules about different types of weapons. You don't go too much into the nitty gritty of armor distribution, although it's there, it's present in the sort of front, flank, and rear armor ratings that all the tank units have, right? I like that too. Um, yes, and for the Soviet player, of course, the final thought is, while you're busy trying to set up your amazing offensive, yes, you do get the advantage of being able to start with your real tanks concealed under this massive red stars. But of course, you do this before the German player places his defenses. I think the double blind in this game is very, very well thought out. And if anything, it is slightly less clunky than the double blind in Duel in the Dark. Yes, that has the same level of preliminary programming, but I find that setup for Duel in the Dark can occupy quite a long time. Duel of the Giants is noticeably quicker. And of the two, I would say if you want a faster and less involved game and you're not too bothered about whether the theme is bombing the Reich or breaking through or trying to hold the Eastern Front, then maybe for a quicker pickup game, Duel of the Giants should be your choice. Um, I find it lots of fun. I'm never going to get rid of my copy because I think not only is it a great system that works quite well for Eastern Front combat, but I'm sure with a bit of tweaking, those of you who have the tank models and want to be a bit inventive could easily convert it into a West Front scenario, the aftermath of the Battle of the Bulge or something like that. It would work equally well if you just substituted a ton of Shermans for the T-34s. So yes, I am very pleased to say, although sadly this game is out of print now, it debuted in 2010, so I'm not totally surprised by that. It's out of print, but the last time I looked, there are many copies floating around out there. It's quite easily obtainable. In fact, just the other week, I saw one up on eBay, ebay.co.uk. Sorry, not anywhere else. But that was going for about £29, which was a surprise. I mean, secondhand, so maybe everything's a bit scuffed, but even so, that's a very good price. And I think if you look hard enough, it's quite easy to source a copy. If you've already got one, brilliant. I'd encourage you to share it to someone else and spread the love a bit. Now, as far as I know, Friedemann de Pedro did not produce any more wartime games along this theme, the duel theme, which is a bit of a pity because I think he was onto a good thing. But equally, it may have been the case that he knew when to stop. The other good thing about Duel of the Giants is that it doesn't have anywhere near as many expansions as Duel in the Dark. Now, Duel in the Dark is a game that deserves many expansions, and I'm glad it has all of them. But I think adding things to this game might have run the risk of possibly making it a bit of a burdensome experience, because with expansions you get more optional rules and things like that. I don't think there'd be so much to be gained introducing different types of, different subcategories of German and Soviet tanks. This is an excellent game without any Panzer IVs tagging along, and it's an excellent game without any Joseph Stalins or KV-1s. So I think it works really well as it is, plus with no expansions. Storage is fairly straightforward. So if you've never tried this game and you've never heard of it before coming across my videos, then I would really recommend giving it a try. I don't think you'll regret it. It's one of those games that can be an excellent filler if you're wanting to play one or two heavy duty East Front games. It's a very good game that would get you in the mood for more Eastern Front action. The theme works really, really well. And at the end of the day, most importantly, there's enough of a nod to history, I think, for it to, I would happily qualify this as a historical war game. It's all in the detail, isn't it? But at the same time, above all, it's fun. It is lots and lots of fun. Double blind games usually are. So I heartily recommend this game. As I say, I'm never letting go of my copy. And if you do get a chance to play it, then I hope you end up liking it as much as I do. But I will put that one to bed, because there really is nothing more to add from my perspective, except to say thank you guys very much for following this series. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. To my long-suffering and extremely patient veterans and good friends, it's really lovely to see you guys, as always. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the brilliant feedback and comments. As ever, I'm behind you in the distance, puffing to keep up, but I will get round to answering you guys soon. So thank you so much for leaving the comments. I'll reply as soon as I can. If you're new to my channel, if it's the first video you've seen, then a very big hello and a warm welcome to you. If it is Duel of the Giants or even Duel in the Dark that brought you here, then I hope you've enjoyed the videos. And if it's wargaming in general, please do have a meander around the channel. You're more than welcome. I hope you find something else that you like. But as always, guys, whoever you are and wherever you're watching from, thank you so much. Always great to have your company, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.